April 1717. You are standing on the deck of the Whydah as it moves north along the Atlantic coast. Below your feet are chests, trade goods, weapons, food, and money taken from other ships. You are not earning a monthly wage. You joined for a share. One witness at the later trial described a share worth about £50. Compared with basic naval wages of the period, that could equal several years of ordinary pay. On paper, it was enough to change a sailor's position completely. But a share was not necessarily money in your pocket. Testimony describes common funds kept in chests and controlled by the quartermaster. Other witnesses disagreed about how much treasure the company held and whether it had been fully divided. The real question, then, is not simply how much value sat below deck. It is how much of that value a sailor could survive to receive, carry ashore, convert into spendable money, and keep. Could an ordinary sailor actually become rich on a pirate ship? To answer that, we first have to strip away the familiar image of the pirate vessel and look at the Whydah as an operating business. The Whydah is remembered as a pirate ship. It did not begin as one. It was a large Atlantic trading vessel, roughly 300 tons, built to carry people and cargo over long distances. Its earlier commercial service included the trafficking of enslaved Africans, a history that remains part of the ship even after Bellamy's crew took control. Early in 1717, Samuel Bellamy's company pursued the Whydah and captured it. Later court testimony described trade goods, precious metal, about 50 people, and 18 guns being fitted aboard the vessel. Bellamy moved his command onto the captured ship because it offered more cargo space, more force, and a stronger platform for future attacks. That changed control, not legal ownership. The original investors had financed a productive asset. Bellamy's crew seized the right to operate it. They could sail it, arm it, fill it, and use it to take other ships, but they did not receive secure legal title. The central surviving record is the 1718 trial involving men connected to the Whydah's company. Their statements describe captures, common funds, the quartermaster, voluntary and forced service, and the final wreck. Those statements are valuable, but they are not neutral accounts. Defendants had reasons to minimize their participation, and the testimony conflicts over crew size, treasure totals, and distribution. The trial record can reveal the structure of the operation. It cannot give us a complete ledger. A pirate voyage consumed resources before it captured anything. A lookout searched the horizon. Sailors worked the canvas. The helmsman held a course. Food and water disappeared each day, while rope, sails, and the hull absorbed wear. The Whydah was reportedly pursued for several days before it was taken. During that chase, Bellamy's crew earned nothing. They spent time and supplies for the chance to capture a better asset. Speed mattered, but it had to be maintained. A fouled hull or damaged rigging could turn a powerful vessel into an easy target. Cleaning and repair were therefore part of the revenue system. They preserved the ability to catch the next ship. Once the pirates closed the distance, intimidation could be cheaper than battle. A large crew, visible guns, and a dangerous reputation might persuade a merchant captain to surrender before either side destroyed valuable cargo. Resistance made the transaction more expensive. Powder and shot were consumed. Rigging could be damaged. Men could be wounded. The prize itself might lose value before the pirates controlled it. After surrender came inspection. Coins and precious metal were useful because they were portable. Yet the crew also looked for food, alcohol, clothing, powder, rope, sailcloth, tools, and skilled labor. A carpenter could be worth more to the next voyage than a bulky cargo with no safe buyer. Sometimes the most valuable prize was the vessel itself. Goods and people then had to be transferred. A prize crew might take command of the captured ship. Watches had to be filled. Damage had to be repaired. Stores had to be guarded, and several vessels might need to remain together. Only after all of that could the company store, divide, consume, or sell what it had taken. Piracy was not one act of theft. It was a chain of search, force, transport, labor, storage, and conversion. Every link could create value. Every link could break. A lawful shipowner had to finance construction, equipment, stores, and the working cash needed to keep a vessel moving. Bellamy's company did not pay a market price for the Whydah. That did not make the acquisition costless. The crew paid through pursuit, armed force, exposure to prosecution, and the risk of damaging the vessel or losing men during the capture. Seizure replaced the purchase price with a different form of cost. The prize delivered a hull, cargo space, guns, boats, sails, rigging, and remaining stores. All of it could support future operations without a normal investment transaction. An ordinary sailor entered on another basis. He did not buy a lawful share in the ship. He contributed labor, maritime skill, combat service, and acceptance of criminal risk. In return, he might qualify for part of the captured property. This created three separate positions. The original investors remained the legal owners, even after losing control. Bellamy's company became the operator, even without secure title. The sailor carried daily risk and expected a share, but he did not hold a durable ownership interest that could be sold or inherited. Working capital also looked different on a pirate ship. Money could purchase supplies, but captured flour fed the crew directly. Powder armed the guns. Clothing equipped sailors. Rope and sailcloth preserved the vessel. Some loot never became cash because it was more valuable as an input. Bellamy's company had avoided the largest cash expense, buying the ship. At the same time, it had placed its people, inventory, weapons, and future income inside an asset that the law could condemn and the sea could destroy. Pirates are often described as sailors who worked without salaries. That can make the labor system look cheap. It was not cheap, it was paid differently. A large crew gave the Whydah force. More sailors could work more canvas, serve more guns, overwhelm a merchant vessel, move cargo quickly, and provide prize crews for captured ships. The same men consumed food, water, clothing, space, and medical attention. They also expected shares. The labor force was not uniform. Some men appeared to have joined voluntarily. Others said they had been forced aboard. Skilled sailors and carpenters were particularly valuable because a wooden ship required constant repair and experienced handling. Court testimony suggests that forced men could still appear on watch lists and perform necessary work. That did not necessarily give them the same voice or financial position as voluntary members. Their labor created value, but their presence created a security cost. The company needed their skills while guarding against escape, resistance, or later testimony. Supply pressure made the problem sharper. Food, water, powder, shot, rope, canvas, and repair materials did not arrive through a stable, lawful network. The crew carried what it already had, obtained what it could, and took what it needed from other ships. If targets became scarce, loot stopped arriving, so did fresh supplies. The Whydah would then sail farther while its stores declined. More distance meant more consumption and more wear. The crew might be pushed toward a less valuable target, a stronger opponent, or a riskier coastline. Even a successful capture leaked value. Food was eaten rather than sold. Powder was used in future attacks. Goods spoiled. Cargo occupied limited space. Some merchandise had to be moved between vessels. Men escaped. Stolen goods might have to be sold through unofficial channels at a discount. The company did not face a conventional monthly payroll, but it still supported an armed population every day. And the share system created its own obligation. Each capture enlarged the common pool. It also strengthened the claims of the men who sailed, fought, repaired, guarded, and transferred the property. For that system to hold together, the promise of future distribution had to remain credible. The visible return was the familiar one: gold, silver, coin, and valuable cargo. Trial testimony mentions precious metal and goods including sugar, indigo, alcohol, food, clothing, and other supplies. These assets did not all function in the same way. Coins could be divided, food could be consumed, Powder could support another attack. Trade goods could be sold only after the crew reached someone willing to buy them. That is the difference between gross loot and realized income. A chest of silver has obvious value, but it still has to survive the voyage and reach the sailor entitled to a portion. A cargo of sugar may have a market price, yet it takes space, can be damaged, and may sell for less when the seller cannot enter a lawful market. Powder may never produce cash at all. Its return comes through the next capture it helps make possible. The surviving witnesses gave conflicting estimates for the Whydah's treasure. Those figures suggest scale. They do not form a complete account. There is no responsible way to subtract a few guessed costs and announce a precise profit. Visible loot mattered. It attracted labor and rewarded successful attacks. But it was only the first layer of the enterprise value. The next layer was the value of everything the crew no longer had to buy. Captured flour, meat, drink, clothing, powder, and repair material reduced immediate cash needs. Consuming those goods did not create revenue, but it kept the company operating. Then came cargo space. The Whydah could carry more than a small raiding vessel. That allowed the crew to keep different kinds of goods, support more people, and remain at sea while looking for another target. The ship's equipment added another layer. Guns strengthened intimidation. Boats moved boarding parties and cargo. Sails and rigging created speed. Tools and spare material protected the hull's future earning capacity. These assets did not wait to be sold. They produced operating power. Captured vessels could also provide labor. An experienced sailor could stand a watch. A carpenter could repair the hull. A navigator could recognize routes, shoals, and coastlines. That labor increased capacity, although forced service added surveillance costs and the risk of resistance. Information had value too. The company needed to know where merchant traffic moved, where water could be found, where a hull might be cleaned, and where stolen goods could be exchanged. Reputation could lower the cost of a capture. A merchant captain who surrendered quickly saved the pirates' ammunition, injuries, repair work, and damage to the cargo. Yet each advantage carried a matching burden. A larger vessel needed more maintenance. More guns required ammunition and crews. More cargo needed space and protection. More sailors consumed more supplies and created more claims. The quartermaster helped manage those conflicts. Court testimony describes common money, a book, and controlled access to funds or clothing. Central control could limit private theft and prevent one powerful individual from taking everything immediately. It also meant that a sailor's recorded share was not the same as cash under his control. This changes the meaning of the treasure. The treasure was not the profit. It was inventory trapped inside a floating criminal enterprise. The deeper business mechanism was direct reinvestment. A captured ship became capital. Food became operating supply. Weapons became future force. Skilled sailors became labor. Information and reputation reduced the cost of taking the next prize. Only after the company preserved, sold, and distributed that value could it become personal wealth. The Whydah's advantages also made the company harder to manage. A larger ship increased capacity, but it demanded more skilled labor and maintenance. More men strengthened a boarding party, but they consumed supplies and expanded the number of claims on the common pool. Forced sailors added useful labor while creating a need for surveillance and a source of hostile evidence if the company was captured. Common storage protected money and goods from casual theft. It also created custody disputes and gave the quartermaster influence over access. A sailor might believe he had earned a share while still depending on another officer for clothing, cash, or final settlement. Reputation produced the same double effect. Fear could shorten a chase and prevent a damaging fight. It could also attract official attention, close markets, and make it harder for crew members to return to lawful society. The greatest external liability was criminal law. Men connected to the Whydah could be arrested, tried for piracy, lose whatever property remained, and face execution. At the later trial, the difference between voluntary and forced participation became critical. Men whose claims of coercion were accepted avoided the same judgment imposed on willing participants. That created a severe economic conflict. The stronger a sailor's claim to the company's rewards, the harder it could be to deny membership when the company entered a courtroom. The Whydah faced several risks before its final voyage ended. Scarce targets reduced both loot and replacement supplies. A fouled hull or damaged rigging weakened the vessel's speed. Forced men could resist or testify against the company. Capture by authorities could turn an expected payment into confiscation and trial. One design problem tied those risks together: concentration. The hull carried the labor force, guns, food, repair equipment, common funds, captured goods, and the means of escape. A single physical failure could strike every part of the enterprise at once. On April 26, 1717, the Whydah met a storm off Cape Cod. A survivor's testimony described the ship losing the ability to remain safely offshore, being driven onto the shoals, losing its mainmast, and breaking apart under the sea's force. The economic chain collapsed with the vessel. The storm removed control. The shoals stopped the ship. Structural failure destroyed the operating platform. Chests and cargo were scattered. A share recorded in a book could no longer be paid from the common fund. Most of the people aboard died. Survivors faced arrest and trial instead of a settlement. This was more than an accident at the end of a profitable voyage. It exposed the central weakness of the entire model. Revenue, inventory, working supplies, labor, weapons, and escape capacity were all concentrated in one vulnerable asset. That makes the key variable in the financial reconstruction clear: not the reported value of the treasure. The crucial variable is the percentage of a sailor's allocated share that became property he could carry ashore and keep. No complete Whydah ledger survives, so this reconstruction does not calculate a precise company profit. It uses a reported share of about £50, comparable naval wages, and the documented difference between common treasure and personal possession. It excludes different share rates, many operating costs, and any precise probability of survival. Begin with the strong outcome. Assume a voluntary sailor qualifies for one full share. The company reaches a friendly market, sells the goods, settles the common account, and delivers value close to £50. Compared with basic naval wages, that amount could equal roughly 3.5 to more than 4 years of pay. The payment could transform the sailor's financial position. It would still be a realized distribution, not proof that the voyage produced the same amount in economic profit after every cost and risk. In the ordinary outcome, the share exists, but only part of it becomes accessible. Some value remains in goods. Some is consumed during operations. Some disappears through leakage, discounting, or the company's continuing need for supplies. The sailor may receive food, clothing, small payments, and a future claim instead of a complete cash settlement. That package might still exceed several months of lawful wages. It would not necessarily create durable wealth. The sailor would remain exposed to another voyage, another market, and another patrol. The weak outcome is the simplest. A share is recorded in a book or represented by goods in a common chest. Then the ship sinks, the sailor dies, or the authorities seize what remains. The internal claim may have existed, accessible cash, and realized wealth fall to zero. The Whydah reached that outcome. Conversion drives the result. At full conversion, a £50 share could change a sailor's life. At partial conversion, the opportunity shrinks quickly. At zero conversion, even the largest treasure estimate has no financial meaning for the individual. That is why a modern price for the treasure would tell us very little. The useful comparison is the amount of ordinary labor the share might replace, provided the sailor actually received it. The company clearly captured valuable property. The financial test is whether that property completed the path from gross loot to allocated share, to accessible cash, and finally to durable wealth. The Whydah company proved that its model could accumulate assets. It controlled a large vessel, guns, supplies, cargo, money, and a substantial labor force. A reported share could compare with years of ordinary wages. Potential, however, is not the same as outcome. The ship broke apart before most of that value could become lasting, personal property. Men who expected shares drowned. Survivors were left to defend themselves in court. The legal owners lost control of their ship. The pirate company gained operational control without secure title. The ordinary sailor carried the daily danger without receiving the long-term value of ownership. Could a pirate ship make an ordinary sailor rich? Yes, but only through a narrow chain of conditions. The company had to capture valuable property, preserve the ship, maintain discipline, reach a market, sell the goods, settle the shares, survive official enforcement, and keep the proceeds. Failure at any one stage could reduce a large internal claim to nothing. The Whydah does not show an enterprise without revenue. It shows why revenue and wealth must remain separate. Return to the chest below deck. At the beginning, it looked like the sailor's future. After the storm, it became an archaeological object beneath sand and water. On a pirate ship, the distance between riches and ruin was not the amount of treasure in the hold. It was the distance still remaining to shore.